Tables are great. They're supportive, sturdy, and they'll never get up and leave. Welcome to Two Girls with a Mic, starring Alicia and Brooklyn, where we explore the history of smaller design pieces because even the little things deserve love.
Today we have this lovely Danish coffee table, a Gangsø Møbler original from the 1960s that has survived and stayed in mint condition for the past 60 years. Through the exploration of Gangsø Møbler's mid-20th century tiled coffee table, one can see the influence of Scandinavian furniture design through its interpretation of the modernism movement, its success in international design fields, and its material attributes.
Alright, so let's quickly define modernism as a broad movement before we jump into any interpretations. Modernism was a post-war movement that aimed to reject the past ideas of decoration and craftsmanship, and instead embrace technology and universal designs. To make a long story short, designers said everything regarding past design ideas should stay in the past. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about Scandinavia's take on modernism.
Scandinavian modernism is focused on the idea of timelessness. To Danish designers, the highest expression of taste involved the concept of timelessness, a quality that can be discovered in Scandinavian design and in the work of the most significant contemporary designers who used a bare minimum of decoration and followed techniques that were true to their materials. Now, we have done our research and we managed to find good quality research papers that didn't cost us any money, which is good because we are very poor. Now, according to our crown jewel, our 1968 PhD academic paper, Danish modernism is focused on features that the Danes associate with quality, those being an object's form, its materials, how it's produced, and what it's priced at.
Now, later on in the podcast, we'll discuss the physical characteristics of our table here. However, we will say that the table is a hybrid in terms of production. The frame of the table itself was machine-made, but the ceramic tiles along the top are man-made. Danish and Scandinavian modernism didn't fully embrace machine creations. They struck a balance between man-made and machine-made, unlike other mainstream modernist locations.
Now, in regards to pricing, the original price of the table when it was first released in the mid-60s is unknown. However, our lovely subscriber who supplied us with this table told us that they bought the table in the 1990s for $500. Doing a quick conversion, the price of this table now would be about $1,300, which compared to our local IKEA furniture catalog is a reasonable price.
Stepping back into Scandinavian modernism, to give you an idea of their design mindset, listen to this. Several factors rested at the heart of traditional Scandinavian design, and those were beauty, functionality, democracy, and affordability. Now, it's the aspect of beauty that we want to focus on, because other modernist movements chose to disregard beauty in their objects. The primary goal of other modernist movements was functionality. It didn't matter to people if the object looked hideous. If it did its job right, then it was a total work of art.
So far, we've discussed how Scandinavian modernism strayed from Central modernism, but now let's visit the other side of the spectrum, how Scandinavian modernism matches Central modernism. According to Scandinavian designers, Scandinavian mindset remains central to their founding principles. They produce democratic, social as opposed to individual, affordable luxury. They want everyone to be able to afford their designs. Like the Central modernism movement, Scandinavian modernism was focused on creating functional objects that could be obtained by anyone with some money to their name. They believe that the common people known as us should be able to have nice-looking things that actually worked properly, which is so kind of them.
Designers in Scandinavia steered a middle ground between standardization and efficiency on the one hand, and psychological considerations of modern living and the persistence and revitalization of regional craft workshops and the national traditions of the other. You see, to put it philosophically, Danish modernism is not designed for special customs or wishes of certain countries, but is an expression of a special way of life. Metaphorically, Scandinavian modernist design is the medium spice level of the modernist hot sauce shot.
Alright, so now that we've introduced Scandinavian modernism as a concept, we now need to tell you guys how a Danish modernist piece ended up in Edmonton. So let's now dive into how it became so popular. To really give you guys a baseline as to how this all started, we are going to take a look at this traveling exhibition called Design in Scandinavia, or DIS for short. DIS was a traveling exhibition that was shown at 24 different locations throughout the US and Canada during the years 1954 to 1957. During its brief 3-year campaign, it managed to attract roughly 660,000 people, and it managed to break almost all records for visitors to temporary exhibitions.
Now, according to our expert Goldberg, DIS was organized as a joint enterprise by the National Association of Craft, Applied Art, and Design in Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Sweden, and the American Federation of Arts. This is important because it shows the collaboration between North America and Scandinavia for design as a whole, which then leads to Scandinavian popularity. So while the exhibition might have been a large reason as to how Scandinavian design entered the public eye for North America, it's not actually the beginning of how Scandinavia appeared. See, it actually started because of two things, the Great Depression and international imports. I know, two very different ideas, but just hear us out.
In regards to the Great Depression, Canadians witnessed the arrival of artisans from Sweden and Denmark who settled across the country to take advantage of its economic opportunities. This explains how Scandinavian designers wound up in Canada, so now we need to discuss how Scandinavian products got into Canada. This is simply due to imports. Scandinavian forms of furniture were beginning to fill the market from a variety of sources, including direct imports available in stores such as Shayla's of Canada and Toronto, and inexpensive lines that were being brought into Canada through large department stores. Now, all the previous information we just told you is really just about how Scandinavian design wound up in North America. Now we're going to discuss its popularity. Scandinavian design gained its popularity in the 50s and 60s because of DIS, and also because the Scandinavian modern style was praised as a modern, functional design with a human touch and was a more subtle modernization of traditional values. So in other words, northern audiences liked that Scandinavian design was less modernist. People tend to not like extremes, so with Scandinavia being a middle ground found international audiences latched onto its design.
This design was also globally recognized for its quality, innovative use of materials, affordability, and minimalist yet harmonious aesthetic dimensions. Now, while this explains its popularity in the 50s, we still need to discuss why our table here was bought in the 90s. Well, don't you worry, because we have the answer to this. While Scandinavian design took a slight hit in popularity after the 60s, in the late 1990s, the interest in Scandinavian design rose again, and it was partially fueled by a renewed appreciation of modernist design icons or classics, and partly by a retro cult of mid-century modernism. We've seen this phenomenon time and time again. Any sort of aesthetic movement in history gets brought back into the present, like how bell-bottom jeans and halter tops, which were popular in the 70s, are coming back to mainstream style. Apparently, people love to recycle, not just plastic, but design trends as well.
Now, to understand the last reason as to why Scandinavian furniture was super popular in Canada, we have to take a quick look at its physical construction and the environment that it was actually built in. Scandinavia has a similar climate to Canada, so their furniture conditions have to withstand the cold winters, which means that they will also be able to withstand Canadian winters. And hey, when it comes to necessary furniture, people want things that will actually hold up against harsh conditions. So this all explains the international success of Scandinavian design. Now that we've gone through the necessary backstory, we can discuss the actual table we have here today and why it deserves an entire episode on our podcast.
Alright, now is the moment you've all been waiting for, the discussion and dissection of the table itself. On the screen now is an image of the table so you guys can see what it looks like. Now, Scandinavian-styled objects generally understood as modern and functional are made in natural materials with gentle curves and rough or smooth surfaces. So as you can see, the two main materials are teak wood and ceramic tiles, with teak wood obviously coming from trees and ceramics coming from clay. We'll discuss more about the wood and ceramics in a little bit, but for right now we wanted to focus on the smooth surfaces.
You can see here all the table's edges have been rounded out. There's no sharp corners and everything has been polished in a shiny lacquer to stop the wood from chipping and to keep it smooth. The simple choice of choosing to round the edges of the table is actually a key detail that helps to identify what part of the world it originally came from.
Now we're going to discuss the ceramic tile inlays and their features. So these tiles are slightly coarse and are split into square sections, with certain parts of the squares having vertical lines carved into them. These lines showcase the minimalist design of Scandinavian modernism, but they also serve a key purpose. They provide textured surface area which prevents objects from sliding off the table. We also tried sliding around some mugs on the table to see if the grooves would stop the mugs mid-motion, and you wouldn't believe it. As soon as the mugs hit the grooves, they stopped in their tracks.
Now it's time to discuss the wooden frame of the table. Our subscriber told us that when they purchased the table, it was advertised as a teak wood table. Going off of that information, we need to figure out what type of teak wood it was made from. To figure out the type of teak wood and the qualities of teak wood as a whole, we consulted the Global Teak Study. In this study, we figured out that our table here was made from natural-grown teak because of the following excerpt. Natural-grown teak is a distinct color transition from sapwood to heartwood characterized by a golden brown color. Wood from fast-grown teak trees is less durable than natural forest teak trees, and the wood is generally paler and lighter. You'll see the color difference between natural and fast-grown, and now you'll see the color of our table next to those two images. Notice that our table is a color match to the natural teak. Another important aspect about teak wood is its durability, which belongs to durability class 1. To test the wood and by extension the table's durability, we decided that the logical test was to have both of us stand on it at the same time. So this table easily held roughly 250 pounds of solid muscle without a flinch or wobble.
You'll notice that a lot of Danish furniture is made from teak wood, and this is simply because teak is preferred for its high-quality timber owing to its moderate density and strength, high dimensional stability, high durability, and ornamental wood figure. Instead of going for other modernist woods like walnut and oak, Denmark, and by extension Scandinavia, took care of their wood during the production process. So despite not using the hardest wood around, they still had nice pieces, unlike what you can currently find in your nearest Home Depot.
Now we're going to talk about the dimensions of the table because the Scandinavians didn't just randomly choose their table's dimensions, there was a reason behind everything. Now we would have loved to have found specific information about Gangsø Møbler, however we believe that the majority of scholars must have looked at the company's name and saw the word gang and decided not to touch the topic with a 10-foot pole. So we instead are going to look at a more mainstream Danish craftsman, Kari Klint.
We're specifically going to look at Klint's sideboard for its dimensions because the dimensions of Klint's sideboard were based on standard sizes for dishes, cups, saucers, and other dining room utensils. Danish furniture was actually designed with all these small aspects in mind, so since our object is a coffee table for a living room, we decided to measure it and then measure the height of a couch, and we'll explain why after we give you the dimensions.
So our coffee table here is 50.5 inches long, 27 inches wide, and 15.5 inches tall. Now the couch we measured is a standard suede couch that was from the early 2000s with a height of 25 inches from floor to armrest. With our measurements out of the way, we decided to place the table in front of the couch and rest our feet on it to see if it was at a comfortable height. Now to our surprise, our feet and legs were perfectly resting on the table. There was no weird incline and there was no need for bent knees.
It's so rare that you find furniture that just seems to magically fit everything you need. Well, it turns out it's not a magical coincidence, but a purposeful design choice. Scandinavian design and furniture making was a heavily thought-out process to beginning to end. Everyday tasks were studied carefully so that designers could determine and create lasting solutions that would make daily living more comfortable. This one simple idea is what ties our lovely little table here back to the initial idea of Scandinavian modernism. Everything is meant to serve a function, but also still appear aesthetically pleasing to the eye.
Alright, if you've made it to the end of our podcast, then you will have brand new knowledge about how Gangsø Møbler's mid-20th century tiled coffee table shows the influence of Scandinavian furniture design through its interpretation of the modernism movement, its success in international design fields, and its material attributes.
Thank you again for sticking around and listening to us talk about the little things that made a huge impact in the design design world. Once again, if you want Two Girls with a Mic to continue, hit that subscribe button as it really helps support the podcast, and let us know what you want to see more of in the future.
Tune in next time to see what piece we decide to pick apart and assess. And with that, these two girls are signing off.